Today, I'm going to explain a horror thriller movie called Heretic. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. The movie opens in a public park where two Mormon missionaries, Sister Barnes and Sister Paxton, are having a conversation about pornography. Barnes comes across as the more experienced one at Mormonism, not pornography, as she has converted at least 7 people in the last month alone. Paxton seems more naive, although she is blindly faithful to her religion. She discusses how she felt bad for the actress in the pornographic movie that she watched. It is then revealed that they are visiting people who have previously shown interest in their church. Shortly afterwards, they arrive at a house, and Barnes locks their bicycles to a nearby fence. She puts the key in her pocket, knocks on the door, and they are soon greeted by a retired Englishman, Mr. Reed. The two sisters introduce themselves, explaining that they're here to discuss his interest in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Reed appears to be interested and invites them inside, pointing out to the stormy weather, but the missionaries explain that in order for them to come in, there needs to be a woman present for safety reasons. The charming Englishman assures them that his wife is home and preparing a blueberry pie at the moment.
She exists, I promise. Just come on in.
Once they are inside, Mr. Reed offers to take their damp coats and hang them nearby. The sisters agree to this, and the man leaves, saying that he'll also check on the snacks at the same time. He returns after a few minutes and says his wife will soon join them with the pie. The trio then settles down with their warm drinks and begins a conversation. But before talking about religion, Reed asks the sisters about their personal histories. Paxton shares that she was born and raised in the church, while Barnes says her mother was a convert. After her dad passed away, they tried attending a few different churches, as they were unsure what path to follow. Reed shares that he understands the struggle of finding faith, admitting it's a personal challenge that he's faced for a long time. He then turns to Sister Barnes and asks how her father passed away. The latter seems a little taken aback by the personal question, but replies that it was Lou Gehrig's disease. Mishearing what she just said, Reed cracks a joke about blueberry disease. He, however, quickly realizes his mistake and explains that he thought Barnes was making a pie-related joke. Paxton tries to salvage the situation by saying that she would like to return as a butterfly after death. This would allow her to stay close to loved ones, and she would land on their fingertips as a sign. Despite the awkward moment, Reed shifts the conversation to religion, initially expressing respect for their faith, but his tone soon shifts as he delves into controversial subjects like the history of polygamy in Mormonism. Barnes explains that polygamy was once a spiritual mission to help the Mormon community grow after hardship and bloodshed. She adds it was removed from the church because it was no longer necessary. However, Reed refuses to let the topic go, despite noticing that the two missionaries are visibly uncomfortable. He doubts the reliability of biblical revelations if the people that propagate these teachings are flawed, sinful humans. Furthermore, Reed asks how anyone can be sure if their religious teachings are true. Paxton calmly answers that she believes her religion because of how it makes her feel. As the conversation progresses, the missionaries realize Reed is more interested in imposing his views than listening to theirs. Barnes then interrupts his monotonous tirade and asks to meet his wife again. Reed hesitates for a split second, but agrees to speak with her and leaves the room. When they are alone in the living room, Barnes casually checks the candle placed on the table. The label reads that it is blueberry pie scented, which means that there is no wife baking a pie, or he just really likes blueberry pie. This suddenly makes Barnes realize that Reed has been deceiving them all this time. She relays this information to her friend, and both conclude that his intentions are not good. When Reed eventually returns, he has neither the pie nor his wife with him, and instead invites them into the kitchen. They refuse the offer, and Barnes makes up a lie that they just received a call from the church. Disappointed, Reed heads back inside and says that he will tell his wife that their guests are about to leave. Barnes waits for them to go away, then tells Paxton that they must leave immediately. The two women rush towards the exit without their coats, only to find the door locked. Paxton then attempts to make a call, but discovers that there's no network. Suddenly, they hear a noise from inside, and a second later, the lights of the house go out. This forces the women to reluctantly head deeper into the house, where they come across a library. Reed also arrives in the room and welcomes them once more. The missionaries explain that they must leave as soon as possible. Reed calmly tells them to go ahead, and the women pick up their coats, which have been placed nearby. Rather curiously, the key to their bicycle lock is in Paxton's Paxton's pocket. When they came in, Barnes had made sure she kept it in her pocket. She then asks Reed to open the door, but he explains that it's locked due to a timer system. He adds that the front door won't open until the next morning. Reed offers them the back door as an alternative, but they hesitate, sensing something is wrong. They insist on leaving through the front door, but Reed refuses, stating it's not possible. Suddenly, his tone becomes sinister, and he accuses them of lying about the church call. Barnes insists it was no excuse, but Reed argues that's impossible. He reveals that the walls and ceilings of the house are made of metal, blocking any signal. A panicked Barnes asks Reed if he has a phone, but he claims that he doesn't.
I'm old as shit. I don't even know what a phone is.
Frustrated, Barnes attempts to leave through the back door, only to see that it leads to the basement. She tries another door, but it also leads to the basement, and not an exit. Feeling trapped, Barnes insists that the president of the state knows they're here. Paxton then makes up a story, adding that the police saw them arriving in front of the house. They demand that Reed let them go, warning that he could get into trouble. However, he dismisses their concerns, and finally reveals his true intentions. Reed says that missionaries sell their ideas to others, but today he will sell them his. Attempting to break their faith through logic, Reed announces that there is no God. Following this, he writes belief on one door and disbelief on the other. If they still believe in their religion even after his arguments, they should go through the believer door, but if they agree with his viewpoint, they should choose the disbeliever door. A terrified Paxton thinks that agreeing with Reed will allow them to leave safely. She quickly admits defeat, praising the Englishman for his intelligence. She then says they should leave through the path of disbelief. However, Barnes remains steadfast in her faith despite being fearful. She cross-examines Reed's arguments and disproves him, choosing the path of belief. She asks Paxton if she still believes in God, and the latter confirms. Barnes then holds her friend's hand and leads her through the belief door, but to her horror, Reed locks it behind them as soon as they reach the basement below. As the two women move further inside, they grow anxious, realizing there's no way out. Things get even more creepy when suddenly they hear footsteps approaching. Barnes had grabbed a small knife while Reed was busy lecturing them in the library above. She hands it to Paxton and hatches up a plan to defend themselves. She explains that when she says the code word magic underwear, Paxton should attack Reed with the knife. She couldn't possibly have come up with a more sus code word. However, when the door opens, a woman in a gray dress appears instead of Reed. She appears ghostly, malnourished, with visible bones, and is holding a lantern in one hand and a blueberry pie in the other. Both women are initially frightened, unsure if she's a ghost or a human. Just then, through a speaker in the wall, Reed announces that they are about to witness a miracle. He reveals that the woman in front of them is a prophet, and the blueberry pie in her hand contains poison. She will eat it, which will cause her death, but by God's miracle, the woman will be revived. Right on cue, the woman eats the pie and soon falls dead to the table. Reed continues to claim that she will come back to life, but he is interrupted when the doorbell rings. He thus leaves to attend the door, giving Barnes and Paxton an opportunity to act. They rush to the cell door, shouting loudly to alert whoever is outside, but Reed has soundproofed the house, preventing their voices from reaching the outside. They then try to burn a cloth with a matchstick, hoping the smoke will create a signal. Meanwhile, a man from the church has arrived at the main door, asking about the two missionaries. That's not a churchman, that's venom. Reed makes up a story, saying two young women did come to his gate, but returned almost immediately. It is then revealed that he had already removed their bicycles to prevent any suspicions. His story convinces the church worker, who promptly leaves. Back in the basement, Barnes and Paxton continue with their plan until they succeed in creating smoke. Right at this moment, the dead prophet suddenly comes back to life, shocking both women. Reed also returns a few seconds later and takes the prophet away. He is ecstatic and asks the two missionaries to describe what they just experienced. Barnes, however, realizes that Reed is using psychological tactics to undermine their faith. She refuses to be deceived, stating that what happened wasn't a miracle, but merely a trick. This is when she signals Paxton to act and says the code word, magic underwear. But in a shocking twist of events, Reed acts first and slashes Barnes's throat. A terrified Paxton runs to the door, banging and screaming for help, but to no avail. Reed then tries to calm her down, assuring her that Barnes will come back to life. However, when Paxton returns to the basement floor, Reed reveals that Barnes won't be resurrected. He extracts a metal object from her arm, which Paxton recognizes as a contraceptive device. The creepy Englishman explains that the so-called resurrection was sabotaged and compares it to a simulation, referencing the movie The Matrix. He claims Barnes had lived a double life, lacking true belief or vision, merely part of a programmed system. Reed then challenges Paxton, asking whether she believes in miracles or if his simulation theory is correct. Rather surprisingly, Paxton slowly begins to understand Reed's manipulation. She points out that the simulation was staged and says the so-called miracle is fake. She details how Reed staged everything, including the resurrection. When the bell rang and they were distracted, Reed had swapped the prophet with a body double. She had noticed subtle differences in the woman's position and face when she saw her again. She even speculates and moves a table to reveal a hidden basement underneath. Reed agrees that if a body is found there, her theory would be correct. But there's only one way to prove it. She must enter the basement. Determined to discover the truth and escape, Paxton boldly agrees to go in. Reed tells her to enter only if she wants to know the one true religion, and Paxton enters without hesitation. She descends into the basement where she finds the woman's dead body. This proves her theory right, and she loudly exclaims that she knew it, but a salty Reed says nothing and simply locks the cellar behind her. Nonetheless, Paxton proceeds further inside, driven by the need to uncover the truth. She soon finds a door at the end of the room, secured by her bicycle lock. She uses the key in her pocket to open it, revealing a secret cellar where Reed has kept many women as prisoners. Just then, Reed appears behind her and asks if she found her answer. Paxton finally realizes everything and explains how Reed had been manipulating them from the start. She recalls how when they first entered the house, Reed seemed to speak to his wife, but he was using that as an excuse to take the key from Barnes's coat and move their bicycles. Paxton initially thought Reed had accidentally put the key in her pocket, but now she understood it was intentional. He knew she would use that key to open this door. This means she isn't here by choice, but because Reed manipulated her into the situation to control her beliefs. Upon hearing this, the Englishman confirms that his one true religion is control. He admits that he enjoys controlling others, just like religious institutions do. Paxton looks around and sees several captive women in cages. She feels sad for them, but Reed tells her that it was the women's choices that brought them here. As he continues to bully Paxton, she breaks down and starts crying. Then, all of a sudden, she brings out her knife and stabs him in the neck. Paxton attempts to escape, but the whole house is like a maze. Things get even worse for her when Reed catches up. He stabs her in the stomach, and both of them drop to the floor. As they both bleed out, Reed tells Paxton to pray for them. The missionary begins praying, despite all the evil things that Reed has done to her. She sticks to her faith, showing kindness and resilience even in this dire moment. But just as Reed is about to finish her off, a wooden block with nails hits his forehead, killing him instantly. Paxton looks up and sees Sister Barnes, who is barely standing on her last ounce of energy. She then collapses to the floor, but her act of heroism encourages Paxton to keep trying. After saying goodbye to her friend, she jumps out the window from Reed's study. The movie comes to an end as she finally makes it outside. She sits nearby to catch her breath, and soon a butterfly lands on her hand, indicating that it is her friend, Barnes. Or maybe that she died in there. Or maybe it's just a butterfly. Or maybe it's just a movie.